Welcome to session 3 of our 5x7 snapshot on the role of the clinical chaplain in military medical ethics. In the previous video, we mentioned the ethical importance of revisiting epistemological positioning in health encounters. We discussed Plato's age-old warning that most of how we think we know what we know is either conditioned by our pre-existing categories and hierarchies of meaning, which we almost never challenge, or is the product of our limited insight, which has, under various pressures, perhaps become polarized. We also discussed the special function that clinical chaplains might play in challenging epistemologies of care in their work on multidisciplinary teams, equipped both by their training and the relative freedom of their professional responsibilities. Let's talk a little more about this potentiality. About 15 years ago, Navy SEAL Lieutenant Jason Redman was recovering at Bethesda from serious wounds sustained in combat in Iraq. During his recovery, he now famously had a bright orange sign posted outside of his door, and that sign read as follows: "Attention to all who enter here. If you're coming into this room with sorrow, or to feel sorry for my wounds, go elsewhere. The wounds I received, I got in a job I love, doing it for people I love, supporting the freedom of a country I deeply love. I am incredibly tough and will make a full recovery." What is full? That is the absolute, utmost physically my body has the ability to recover, and then I'll push that about 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. The room you are about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and intense, rapid regrowth. If you are not prepared for that, go elsewhere. Why did that sign go viral? What does it inspire in us? Why did he feel the need to write such a thing in a hospital ward? Wouldn't optimism and a focus on regrowth have been natural features of his healing environment? In our last video, we mentioned that clinical chaplains are trained to think teleologically about illness and suffering. Telos is a Greek word that refers to an ultimate end, but in fact, this end is essentially bi-dimensional. Every time of illness and crisis has the capacity to degrade and even destroy many of the positive qualities of the persons involved. Inevitably, every time of illness and crisis also brings with it the potential to enhance many positive qualities of the people involved and to even create the conditions for new positive qualities to emerge, which were not present in the same way before. The Greek word krisis, in fact, contains these simultaneous potentials. As a matter of fact, this is preserved in the medical definition of crisis, that is, as a crucial or decisive point in an unstable situation, tending either towards improvement or deterioration. Most other definitions of crisis in our common language focus almost exclusively on the negative. And this brings us to a tendency among human persons. Under adversity, for instance, in situations of illness and injury, humans tend to focus on their pain, the erosion of their health, the potential further loss of their health, and so do their caregivers. It's for good reason, in one sense. After all, the focus of medicine is to ease the suffering of persons, restore health. And yet, and I say this very carefully, throughout history, and in almost every culture, there's an appreciation, at least in hindsight, for times of adversity and ill health. Many people at the end of their lives, when asked about the most important time of their lives, mention times of great adversity or ill health. During these times, people do suffer the loss of some of their positive qualities. This is not to be minimized. However, during times of adversity and ill health, people can become more generous than they were before. People can come awake to their realities in a way they were not before. They often refresh their priority. They make new resolutions. They reached out to estranged friends and family members. They realign with their highest sense of meaning and their ultimate values. Some ask the big questions of life. And the pursuit of such questions may have consequences that last until the end of a person's life, perhaps decades later. Chaplains are often attuned and attentive to this duality, this complex teleology of suffering. Most clinical conversations that chaplains hold with ill persons take on this dual dimension, paying sufficient attention to pain, fear, loss, also paying attention to the ways that growth may be budding. The obvious implications of Lieutenant Redman's bright orange sign were that he had picked up cues from various visitors and caregivers alike, no doubt, that his plight, which included serious facial trauma, encouraged many of the people around him to see primarily what he had lost and to treat him in such a way that reduced him to what he had lost. Lieutenant Redmond has given many interviews since. He's not now, nor has he ever been, unaware of his losses or living in some kind of denial. He is simply more than his losses, and always has been. And he felt the need in that moment to express his continuing strength in a way that would alert his visitors and caregivers to see it also. Paying attention to teleology is a profound ethical enterprise. It does not always fit cleanly into our descriptive systems, our principlist frameworks, our technical processes, and branched decision trees. But to lose sight of it has a pathologizing effect that can impact every dimension of the healing process. In the previous video, we spoke about a man who sensed that his destiny as one of the leaders of his people was threatened through becoming helpless in the asylum-seeking process. And we discussed how understanding his health decisions in the light of this sense of individual and corporate destiny represented a profound ethical change of scenery for the healthcare team. That is, it created the conditions for them to soften to him as human beings seeking to approach a human being, rather than simply technicians seeking to treat a problem mechanically. That is certainly another way of seeing the importance of teleology in medical ethics. Why do uniformed clinical chaplains tend to attend to such things? It's germane to the approach of our 1,600 hours of clinical training in the clinical pastoral education process. In the next video, we'll turn our focus to ecological and ecosystemic dimensions of ethics in the military medical setting, another unique line of contribution from clinical chaplains. See you next time.